Okay, so let's start with something kind of specific, almost surprisingly so. Imagine a monk uh, traveling alone through ancient India, Kosala country specifically,
Mhm.
on his way to Savatthi, and he spots this pile of sheep's wool just lying there.
Okay. Just found wool.
Right. What does he do? Well, he bundles it up in his robe and keeps going. Sounds pretty niche, maybe. But trust us, this little story kicks off something really fascinating.
It often does with these ancient texts,
Yeah.
doesn't it? The small details.
Exactly. Welcome to the deep dive. We take loads of information, sometimes complex stuff, and, well, boil it down for you.
Get to the core insights.
Yeah. And today we're diving deep into this specific ancient monastic rule. It comes from excerpts of Nissaggiya 16th, which is basically a text laying out these very intricate monastic regulations.
Highly detailed stuff.
Very. So our mission today is simple. Let's unpack this rule, which seems kind of minor on the surface. We'll look at the weird incident that caused it.
The wool incident.
The wool incident, yeah. Explore all the little details and figure out what it tells us about, how strict these old codes were, but also the human side of it all.
And the reasoning behind the rules.
Right. So, okay, the origin story. Our monk, he's on this journey to Savatthi, finds the wool. You can almost picture him, right? Lone figure, path, unexpected find. Could be useful.
Sure, wool's practical.
Absolutely. But what happens next is where it gets interesting. He bundles it up, carries on. But then people he meets start, well, mocking him.
Mocking him. Why?
They're asking things like, hey, how much did you pay for that? Or what profit are you expecting? Basically, they see him carrying this bundle and assume he's engaging in trade or something.
Ah, the perception issue. It looked like commerce.
Exactly. So he gets really embarrassed by all this public questioning. Eventually, he makes it to Savatthi, still carrying wool.
Still got the wool.
Yep. And he starts sorting through it while standing up. Other monks see this, think it's a bit odd, and ask him, why are you doing that?
Because it's unusual behavior for a monk, sorting goods like that.
Right. So he explains he was mocked on the road because of the wool. He felt ashamed. And then they ask the key question, how far did you carry it?
Okay, the distance.
And his answer, more than a yoshana.
Ah, more than one yoshana.
Yeah. And that specific distance, it immediately gets the attention of certain other monks. The text calls them the apicha, those who desired little.
So the very ascetic ones, the ones really focused on non-attachment.
Precisely. They are not happy. They criticize him, basically saying, why would you carry wool that far? It looks bad. And they report the whole thing straight to the Buddha.
So it escalates quickly from roadside comments to the highest authority.
Instantly. And the Buddha. He confirms the monk's story, hears he carried it more than a yoshana, and expresses his disapproval. He criticizes the monk for it. So why is this such a big deal? It's just wool.
Well, yeah, it seems trivial, doesn't it? But like we touched on, it's not really just about the wool itself. It's about how things look.
Perception again?
Exactly. It highlighted the absolute importance of avoiding even the appearance of impropriety within the monastic community, the Sangha. The Buddha's reaction sends a clear signal. No act is too small if it potentially compromises the community's integrity or leads to public misunderstanding.
So finding wool, collecting it, it went from that to public scrutiny, and then boom, a formal monastic rule.
Precisely because it crossed an invisible line related to monastic conduct and perception.
And this incident, this specific case, directly leads to a formal training rule being laid down, eḷakalomāni.
Which is often how these rules developed, right? Based on real-life situations that revealed a need for clearer guidelines.
Yeah, exactly. So the rule that comes out of this is very specific. It says, okay, if a monk is traveling, finds sheep's wool, he can accept it if he wants.
So it's not forbidden outright.
No, not outright. But after he accepts it, he can only carry it himself for a maximum distance of 3 yojanas.
3. Okay, defined limit.
A very defined limit. And just to clarify, a yojana is an old unit of distance. It's quite a significant way. We don't know exactly how long, but it wasn't trivial. And there's another catch.
Oh.
He can only carry it himself for those 3 yojanas if there's no one else available to carry it for him.
Ah, okay. So if there's a potential helper, he shouldn't be lugging it himself, even within the limit. Or rather, he can carry it, but only if there's no helper.
Right. The rule is permissive only if there's no alternative carrier. So self-carrying is the exception, limited by distance.
Got it. That adds another layer.
And the consequence for breaking this, if he carries it beyond 3 yojanas, even if there's no one else around, that's a Nissaggiya offense.
Okay, and connecting that to the bigger picture, This rule is doing a few things at once, isn't it?
Seems like it.
It acknowledges, like you said, the practical need. Wool is useful, maybe for robes, maybe insulation, who knows? But it stops monks from looking like they're hoarding stuff. Or, worse, engaging in trade. That appearance of commerce again.
Right, keeps things simple.
And that clause about no other carrier, it stresses self-reliance, but within limits. It stops the monk maybe asking lay followers to carry lots of stuff for him, which could also look bad. It's quite cleverly balanced.
Okay, so let's talk about the offense itself. This Nissaggiya pachitya, what does that actually mean for the monk? And they mention another type too, dukkaya.
Right. So Nissaggiya pachitya is the more serious one here. It has two parts, forfeiture and confession.
Forfeiture meaning he loses the item.
Yes, he has to give up the wool. And pachitya generally involves confessing the offense, usually formally within the community. A dukkaya is considered a lesser offense, a wrongdoing, often incurring a simpler form of confession or rectification.
Gotcha. And the rules get incredibly precise about when it becomes the big one, the Nissaggiya.
Oh yeah, extremely precise.
Like, if the monk carries the wool and goes over the 3 yojana limit by just the first foot.
Just one footstep over.
Yeah, that's a dukkaya, a minor offense.
Yeah.
But if he takes a second footstep beyond the limit,
Then it flips.
then it becomes a full Nissaggiya pachitya.
Wow. Talk about splitting hairs.
Right. And there's more. Even if the monk himself stays within the 3 yojanas, but say he throws the wool bundle and it lands beyond the limit,
Still counts?
still a Nissaggiya pachitya, intent and action resulting in the wool crossing the line.
Okay.
And get this. If the wool is put in someone else's cart, maybe without him even realizing it fully, and it gets carried beyond 3 yojanas, still a Nissaggiya offense, he's responsible for forfeiting it.
So ignorance isn't a complete excuse, at least regarding forfeiture. The item itself has transgressed the boundary.
Seems so. And they even dig into the monk's state of mind, his perception versus reality.
The intent part.
Yeah. So if he carries the wool actually beyond 3 yojanas, it doesn't matter if he thought it was over the limit or was uncertain, or even if he thought it was less than the limit, if the reality is he went too far.
Nissaggiya pachitya.
Nissaggiya pachitya. The fact overrides the perception in this case for the main offense. However, if he carries it less than 3 yojanas, so technically no offense, but he thinks he's gone too far, or he's uncertain about it,
Then one.
then it's a dukkaya, a minor offense based on his incorrect perception or doubt, even though the act itself was okay.
Fascinating. So the mental state can still constitute a lesser offense, even if the physical boundary wasn't crossed.
Exactly. The only way there's absolutely no offense is if he carries it less than 3 yojanas and correctly perceives it as less.
So why? I mean, why this incredible level of detail? Breaking down footsteps, mental states.
Yeah, it seems almost obsessive.
Doesn't it? But it shows this extraordinary precision in defining wrongdoing. They weren't just looking at the action, like he carried wool too far. They were dissecting the act, the awareness, the intention. It's about accountability on a really, really granular level, trying to cover every possible scenario.
Like legal fine print, but for monastic life.
Exactly, a kind of forensic approach to ethical behavior.
Okay, so if a monk does commit the main offense, the Nissaggiya one, what happens? You mentioned forfeiture and confession. Is there a specific way it has to be done?
Yes, very specific. It's a formal procedure, not just casually handing it over.
Right. The monk has to make a public declaration, doesn't he?
He has to state, basically, this wool belonging to me, it's gone over the 3 yojana limit. It is Nissaggiya. I forfeit it to the Sangha.
Wow. A formal statement to the community.
Yes, it acknowledges the transgression publicly and formally, hands over the item to the collective, the Sangha.
And then what happens to the wool? Does he just lose it for good?
Well, interestingly, the text indicates the Sangha then decides. After it's forfeited, the community has the discretion. They can give the wool back to the same monk, or they might decide to give it to another monk who needs it.
Oh, so forfeiture doesn't automatically mean permanent loss for him.
Not necessarily. The community judges the situation. It reinforces the rule, ensures the confession happens, but allows for a communal decision about the item's practical use.
So the process is partly punitive, enforcing the rule, but also kinda rehabilitative.
I think that's a good way to put it. It enforces the standard, holds the individual accountable, but keeps the focus on the community's needs and values. It emphasizes that possessions are ultimately for the Sangha's benefit, not just personal accumulation.
Okay, that makes sense. But it wasn't all about penalties and offenses, was it? The text is careful to list situations where there's no offense.
Absolutely. The Anapati case is literally no offense. And this list is just as meticulous, providing crucial clarity.
So what are some of these exceptions? When is it okay?
Well, carrying it exactly 3 yojanas is fine.
Yeah.
Less than 3, obviously fine.
Right.
Carrying it 3 yojanas and then turning back, also permitted. There's a slightly complex point about intending to carry it only 3, but then going further under certain conditions, suggesting maybe unforeseen circumstances could be an excuse.
Right. Nuances matter.
Definitely. Also, crucially, if the wool he receives has already been cut off or discarded like scrap perhaps, that suggests it's not prime material possibly intended for trade.
Ah, so the type or source of the wool matters.
Seems so. And another big one, having someone else carry an already finished item, like a completed robe made from wool, that's fine. The rule is about carrying the raw material yourself beyond the limit.
Okay, so carrying a finished product made by someone else is different.
Exactly. And then there are exceptions for someone deemed insane who wouldn't be held responsible in the same way.
Makes sense.
And quite importantly, for the first offender.
Meaning the original monk, the guy whose actions started all this.
Yes. The rule applies prospectively. It doesn't retroactively punish the person whose specific case led to its creation.
That seems fair. So this long list of exceptions,
Yeah.
what does it tell us?
It shows the really pragmatic side of this ancient legal system.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about laying down rigid, absolute rules. It was also about understanding real-life situations, the monk's state of mind, practical needs, and applying the principle behind the rule logically. It avoids making the rule an unfair burden or leading to unjust accusations. It shows, a deep consideration for context.
So, okay, we've gone deep into this one specific rule about a monk and some sheep's wool. 3 yojanas, Nissaggiya, Patitiya, Dukkaya, forfeiture, exceptions. You might be sitting there thinking, why does this ancient, super specific rule matter to me today?
It's a fair question. Why should we care about monk's wool logistics from centuries ago?
Right. But I think what this deep dive really shows us is how even tiny, everyday actions can become subject to incredibly detailed rules within any community or organization. It's not just ancient monasteries.
True, this speaks volumes about how much perceived conduct matters, how organizations try to prevent misunderstandings or reputational damage.
Yeah, maintaining a clear code of ethics. Think about the rules and guidelines in your own life, maybe at work or even in a hobby group or club. How often do the really specific, nitpicky rules come about because of one particular incident?
Usually, right? Someone did something unexpected and suddenly there's a new clause in the handbook.
Exactly. And those rules are trying to do the same thing, prevent future problems, manage how the group is seen, ensure everyone's acting fairly according to the group's values. This ancient text, it's like a fascinating blueprint for how accountability, community standards, and even legal systems evolve. That monk getting embarrassed wasn't just his problem, it became a community issue about integrity.
Absolutely. This example really underscores how meticulously even seemingly small behaviors were regulated, all to maintain the integrity, the perceived purity of that monastic community. It's a stunning look at just how granular ethical and practical codes can become.
And how they try to balance those big community ideals with, individual circumstances and just practical reality.
It's that balance that's so interesting, striving for clarity, trying to stop even the shadow of impropriety while still allowing for human reality. It's a model for how groups define their boundaries.
So we've taken quite the journey today, haven't we? All starting with a monk finding some wool. We went from his embarrassment on the road all the way to a super detailed law, complete with footnotes and exceptions.
It shows how much insight you can get from digging into these seemingly minor details.
Definitely. It tells us so much about community, ethics, perception, and accountability in that world. So here's something to maybe mull over. Consider how even the most precise, maybe even strange-sounding rules, like this one about wool and distance, offer these surprising windows into the values, the pressures, the whole mindset of a community, no matter how long ago it was. What seemingly small details, maybe tiny rules or unwritten expectations in your own life or work? What might they reveal about the bigger principles or pressures that are quietly shaping your world right now?